Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and I have another STAMPtember exclusive card to share with you guys. This is using the collaboration between Simon Says Stamp and Art Impressions. This is their limited edition exclusive STAMPtember set that is only available while supplies last during STAMPtember. I will have a link, info in my blog post, etc. in the description box below the video. So I started off with some Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 80-pound cardstock that I had already die cut with the largest of the Honeybee Stamp Scallop A2 wafer dies, which I'm kind of obsessed with. I want to use them on all the things. So I die cut the cardstock first, and then I'm inking up this stamp and stamping it onto that cardstock with Simon's Intense Black ink, and had to stamp it a few times because it's a brand new stamp and also a very large stamp. So after stamping it, I used the packaging as a guide. That is something that Art Impressions is really great with all of their, I think pretty much all the stamps they do, whether it be scenery stamps or images like this, etc. Their packaging has a full color example. And I love that because more often than not, it makes me think kind of outside. Like I tend to go with the same colors for things or the same color combos, etc. And then when I add shadows and light areas and that, like I get asked about that a lot. More often than not, I keep it fairly simple. I don't deviate much and that's why I really, really like the Art Impressions packaging, because I look at that, I use that as kind of a guide, and it makes me see shadows and the depth and everything in a different way. And it also makes me think differently in color combos. And the other thing I love about it is the coloring is very, I'll call it simple in the terms of like Copic marker coloring. I can usually achieve a similar look by using, 2, maybe 3 colors, but I'm not, you don't need to do a bunch of crazy blending and like, you could if you want to. But the great thing about this whole thing is it looks great with just a couple colors. It's adding that deeper color to get that shading that just makes this whole image pop. So I've listed all the colors as I'm using them here on the screen. I did speed this up because it took a while to do such a large image. Plus I kept getting interrupted. It was just one of those days when I was making this card. But yeah, I still used my sort of go-to skin color combo for this, but I went, roundabout way of doing it, adding the shading. Here I used a brighter red than the ones on the packaging. This one just kind of stood out to me. I did make a big mess and go right over into the scarf, but I'm going to fix that. I used my colorless blender to push it out a little bit, and then I went back after that had dried and pushed it out a little bit more, so you can see I've kind of faded it out. And then I'm going to color over that, and you're not going to be able to tell, or at least, yeah, you can't tell in the finished example. So after I got to that point, I was like, I am not redoing this. Like, there's ways to make this work. So like I said, I use the packaging as kind of the guide for me for adding the shadows the way I did. And because I definitely would never think to add them in this specific way. And yet that's really what makes these images just, come more to life. And the colors as well. Like a lot of these colors I wouldn't normally put together, like these oranges for the pumpkins. I gravitate towards brighter orange and this sort of thing. But I love the colors too, like fall colors, this image, the sentiment on the inside. Like the stamp set is like, in my opinion, it's a must have. Plus I love the Art Impressions characters, like all these lady sets. They're funny. I haven't pulled mine out in so long and I absolutely love them. I just find them so much more relatable than some images. Plus I like the sentiments, I like the goofiness. Like even this one, I like the goofiness, like they're sitting on pumpkins. Like, yeah, I would totally do that. I would go get my pumpkin spice latte, and if there was pumpkins that's sitting outside the coffee shop, I would just sit on them because, like, why wouldn't you? So that also is what kind of inspired me. After I had stamped this in my head, I was like creating a little scene for these two women, because they're not just like sitting on pumpkins doing nothing. Like as in like the pumpkins aren't just floating in air. But I wanted to get these images completely fully colored first. So after I did all that, I just used the packaging to help me kind of do a straight line because I was worried that I would end up really messing that up after coloring all this image in. And then I just took my 3 warm gray markers to create kind of the sidewalk. That's what I was thinking, is like these pumpkins, for whatever reason, are these 2 big large pumpkins are sitting on a sidewalk against a wall. So I used the W markers to add that shading, color that all in, purposely only coloring up to the stitch line because I kind of wanted to leave the outer area defined. And then I pulled out this MFT English brick wall stencil. I really like the smaller size of the like brick pattern in this. And same thing, I taped it into place, but I used the washi tape and made sure to cover up right up to the stitch line on that die cut because I wanted to leave that area like open. So I just taped off that, and then taped off the stitch line on the top, and then taped off the bottom portion of where the ground is. And I literally ran out of washi tape, or that washi tape anyway, so I just grabbed another one. And then for my sponging, you could mask off these images if you were really worried about this, or depending on the type of stencil you were using, etc. You could totally mask these images off. I did think about that, and then I was just like, I'm gonna make this work, which is a little risky after you've colored everything in. But one, I'm using a lighter ink. I'm using pumice stoned distress ink, and I am kind of keeping away from the images. Now, this mini ink blending tool is pretty big. I can't get into the little areas, but I have one of these little detail blending tools. You need to get a pack of these. These are awesome. They're great for getting into little tiny areas, or if you're like sponging the edges of small die cuts, etc., like die cut sentiments. These are great. They're just perfect little tiny blending tools. So I use that to sponge in between the characters, those tiny little areas that I couldn't get into with my blending tool. But again, if you really wanted to protect your images, I would mask them off first. Just, stamp them, cut out a quick mask, and then you could like add embossing paste if you wanted to, or whatever, to your background. But this totally worked. There was a couple spots where I did go over like the coffee cup, but I fixed that I just used my color splendor to kind of like pick it up. And then I went over the one on the right, I went over her face a little tiny bit. So I was like, oops, but same thing. I just took the skin color marker, the lightest one that I'd used, and just kind of went over that a couple times, and it was fine. And then I just took my W1 marker and just lightly outlined it. It doesn't show up a whole lot, but just, again, gave it that little tiny bit of shading behind them. And then to really make everything pop, I took my white gel pen, and I also took my white gel pen to fix the oops on the coffee cup. So use that, and then added, highlights here and there. Again, in areas I wouldn't think of, but because of the way I did the shading on the coloring and whatnot, that kind of made me think of adding highlights in spots I would normally not think of. And I also added more pattern to her scarf. I thought that would look cute with, the little pattern with the white gel pen as well. So after I've created all of the highlights, I added a few little dots to the ground, just to give it a little more texture and whatnot. And then for the actual card base, I die cut some pattern paper from the Lawn Fawn Perfectly Plaid, or Nitpicky Fall collection. And I die cut it from the largest Simon Says stamp basic rectangle die, which is A2 sized. And then I use the second largest die to die cut that as well, because I just need the tiniest little frame, because you barely see this behind this scalloped rectangle, because this scalloped rectangle is almost A2 size. But that tiny little bit of pattern I thought would be really cute. And I just die cut out the center of it, because you're literally not going to see it. Plus, I can use the center piece. I'm going to use it on the inside of the card. So I adhered that to my card base, and then I also die cut this thanks line sentiment from some dark brown cardstock using the Lawn Fawn Wafer die. And I'm just adhering that right along the bottom of this scene with some multimedia matte adhesive, and then just trimming off the little ends just to butt up right against that stitch edge as well. So once I've got that all created, I can now adhere this to my card base. And like I said, this thing covers pretty much the entire card, but that little bit of brown, knit pattern peeks out just a little bit, I just thought that would kind of be a cute, and plus kind of pull in more fall colors. So I use the remaining piece of that pattern paper on the inside of the card, and I'm using Lawn Fawn's gift card pop-up wafer die. And this die, it's sized to go the landscape mode on an A2 card, like it's 5.5 inches wide. But if you die cut it from a shorter piece, you can make it work for a 4 1/4 inch, top folding card. So that's what I did. And then I took another pattern paper from that Nitpicky Fall pack, and I had die cut that with the smaller of the basic rectangle frames. And I'm stamping the sentiment from this set on it, and I had to do this because I messed up on my card. On the inside of the card, I had stamped the sentiment with Distress Oxide ink, and I wasn't paying attention, and the card base shifted, and I messed it up. And it, you know, the front was already adhered, and I was not pulling things apart or trying to redo any of this. So stamp the sentiment on the pattern paper, adhered that over top, fix the oops. That's what you do. So adhered that into place. And then I have this brown pattern paper that I die cut with that gift card pop up, and all you do is fold down either side of it where the little scallop is. There's a score line that gets embossed when you die cut it. And then you just apply adhesive to those little like scalloped panel parts or whatever you want to call them. And then you adhere that right into the fold of the card, and then that creates a little slot for a gift card. And I have this perfectly themed fall Starbucks gift card, hence using that. I thought it was just perfect for this card. So I'm going to insert that at the end. And then as a final little bit of embellishment, my little bit of bling plus more fall colors, I used several Nouveau drops in like dark walnut and English mustard and golden sunset, and then one of the newer ones, which is the Moroccan red. So not super bright red, but just a nice red. So I applied those to my card, just little tiny dabs and larger ones. And for the larger ones, I'm just tapping my card base just against the lid of my glue bottle just to kind of smooth them out, flatten them out a little bit more. Added a few more because I could. And then I'm going to set this aside and let this dry, and that is going to finish off this card. So you can see how the gift card just fits right in the slot there. As you open the card, the gift card will pop up. So fun. So I will have links below the video to my blog post with links to all the supplies used. You can check that out in the description box below the video if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.